All right, what's up, everybody? Tonight we have another Truth Seeking Thursday with Jay Young here and myself, Greg Dowd. We are going to be talking tonight about leadership, and it's been something that's been on my mind for a long time, and figuring out how to become a leader myself and how to become a more effective leader. Uh, so I wanted to start off tonight. First of all, Jay, how have you been? What's new with you? What's going on?
Life's good. As we were talking about before, I'll be taking some friends to the gun range next week. Looking forward to doing that. I think that as a part of our, I'll say, constitutional responsibility, maybe not constitutional duty, but at least constitutional responsibility, is knowing how to operate a handgun with competency. And I try to do my part to help other people do that. I found that when people have a basic understanding and competency for handgun operation and halfway decent accuracy, they become way more comfortable with the Second Amendment. So I'm trying to do my part to move the cultural needle.
Yeah, that's great, man.
Yeah,
So we are talking pre-show. It's that once somebody has that ability and is comfortable with it, that it helps give you maybe walk around with a little bit more uh, preparedness mindset and
yeah,
just be ready in the event that they need to pull on that knowledge that they have it and they're not in a fear state.
yeah. My dad and I are putting together tomorrow morning. We're going to be putting together the antenna mast I have for ham radio. So have different parts. We just we went to Lowe's and just got different parts that we thought would work. And so looking forward to getting that done and getting the antenna up. I've had two high frequency antenna. That's kind of your long distance, and one VHF UHF antenna. And then also I have a Mesh-tastic radio that I want to put up there as well. Mesh-tastic is really cool. If anyone ever gets a chance, it's basically Mesh Fantastic. And that's a really cool protocol. You can build entire communication networks completely off the grid. So off-grid people, we love that sort of thing. And it can be solar powered. And there's a guy locally who told me that he's getting signal all the way from here to Nashville Airport. So, that's probably close to almost 100 miles by as the crow flies. And it's because there's all these different hops. So we have this virtual topology that's created. So I'm excited to kind of get all this stuff up and running.
I've been meeting more and more people that have been telling me that they're getting into mesh networking
Yep.
and getting some devices and playing around with them.
Yeah.
So the more experience you can get with one of those, because the cool thing about it is that you can share the app if you have it on your phone. You can go phone to phone download
Yeah.
with the app,
Yep.
and then you can now start to use whoever has the little node or the little health tech little node radio transmitter with them. Then it's going to be able to pass those packets along through the mesh network. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's really impressive what it can do. And it's very low power, hence the reason why it can be put on an antenna mast high up or really mounted almost anywhere, as long as it has decent enough batteries and solar cells to replenish. Um, it doesn't consume much power. Now, it is very low bandwidth. That's the trade-off there. But if you're in the fit hits the shan situation, that's a good thing to have.
yeah, absolutely. It's one of those tools that's in our tool chest that
Yep.
everybody has available to them right now.
Yep.
So good to seek out those solutions and to implement them yourself. So, um, so yeah, tonight we're going to talk about the topic of leadership and what it means to be, well, what it means to be a leader and what it means to be an effective and good leader, and maybe some examples of bad leadership as well.
Yeah.
So, so what does a leader look like to you, Jay? I'd like to know that.
Um, Probably a multitude of major factors. I would say that this is a person who um, they want to do the right thing. They typically want to be on a good team. They are they're willing to make mistakes. They're not willing to. They don't have the motivation that. Let me rephrase that. For them, um, the perfect is not the enemy of the good. So they're willing to kind of get out there and try and take their hits. They are willing to be a motivator, maybe a role model for the rest of the people on the team. And so there's probably a differentiation between a leader and a boss. Right? We've seen instances of bosses who just hang back and just let everyone else, do the dirty work. And good leaders who I've seen, they typically want to be the shoulder to shoulder with the people in some capacity, right? I think that's important. They typically have a vision for how they see things happening, and they can articulate that vision very clearly to those who work with them, work for them. So I think that's important. And there is the aspect of character, and what I mean by that is they're willing to make decisions and see them through. And I've seen so many instances of people who they either don't know what to do, and so they just become paralyzed through analysis paralysis, or they do know what to do, but they don't have the spine to push forward with it and make things happen. Either to tell people what to do or just take a chance and say, you know what, I don't know if perfectly if it's going to work, whatever I'm proposing, but we need to try it. We need to move forward, and that takes a special person to kind of have that ability to push the team forward and try to keep going. Yeah, that's a great meme right there. A boss sits back and a leader is out front leading. From what I've seen, the United States Army, the United States military in general, is really good at promoting leadership at all levels. Even a person who is, an E2 or an E3, they try to push good leadership at all levels and say, you don't have to be a person who has rank to take on leadership. And so I think that's important. That's a necessary characteristic, is a person who is able to take initiative. They don't just sit back and wait for people to tell them what to do. If they know something needs to be done, they do their personal best to get it done. Whether it's they're doing it themselves and they're a team of one and they just execute, or they're a team of 100 and they say, hey, let's cobble together a coalition and let's make something happen. Those are probably the top things that I can think of.
Yeah. I didn't realize that my mic was way far away.
Yeah, maybe.
Hopefully people could hear me. Yeah, man. I like how you summed that up, and that there is that. I think a good leader is somebody that gets respect from the people around him.
Yeah.
By being the example, right? By being willing to do everything that they're asking of others. And instead of just, barking orders, that they're in the struggle with you, right? Like they're in the event that they're wanting to, or the vision, like you said, that they're wanting to create, they're in that struggle with you.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of leadership to me when I think about it, as well as thinking about some of the good mentors that I've had, and some of my good bosses that were more like mentors to me, were really good teachers, and were able to take the things that I was doing and then help elevate me as well by giving pointers and giving mentorship. I think that is a component of leadership, is that you want to build up the team around you so that you're increasing their overall skills as well. And um, that, like you said, at a certain point, the leader has to be able to make decisions, and those decisions can be tough decisions that are going to affect the people that are in that struggle with you. And you're going to have to be able to fall on the sword, so to say, right? Like, you're going to have to be able to take criticisms, because maybe the decision that you made, but you made the call, may have been a poor decision, and you have to kind of assess that. Um, so it is a difficult thing, and that might be kind of a lead into to why maybe a lot of the population is more is looking to follow instead of stepping up to be a leader.
Yeah.
um, because it is a bit of a challenge to take on that role, and um, and to maybe take on some of that responsibility and the criticism and those things that you might face by stepping up to fill in some type of leadership position or leadership role that uh, can be a little bit daunting
Mhm.
for a lot of people. What are your thoughts?
I think I agree with you. I found that typically it's far less than 5% of the population that actually has leadership qualities. I think you're right on when you talk about most people just want to follow, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's where the work actually gets done, right? We can't have all chiefs and no Indians. So I think that's important. Um, and I don't know if that's a matter of evolution or culture, but we probably can't have, an entire population, or even 20% of the population that wants to be leaders. I think that it is, by necessity, it kind of needs to be a select few. So I think that that's important. And what the intestinal fortitude to go with a decision also comes with the concept of I'm willing to be wrong, and that's a hard thing to do. Most people are not willing to be wrong about things. If I'm having a civil debate with someone, and I feel that they're kind of getting a little arrogant and getting their heels dug in, I will ask them, "Are you willing to be wrong about your position?" And most people will hesitate. They're not willing to be wrong. They so want to be right that they'll just dig their heels in and they'll just continue to argue the point, even though they're demonstrably wrong. And I think a good leader, nobody wants to be wrong, but a good leader is willing to be wrong and realize, okay, that was not the right decision, or it was the right decision, but the way that I implemented it wasn't good. So I chose poorly on my methodology. And so I think a good leader knows how to say that. So it's this weird dichotomy that we think of leaders as people who have a lot of ego, that they just want to get out front and tell people what to do. But I think good leadership is actually based upon humility, and that is that is really, really hard. And I think the bigger the team, the bigger the organization that they're leading, the more difficult it is to maintain that balance between audacity and humility. And that's something that most people probably don't know how to acknowledge, much less manage.
It can be tough, man, because I found myself in a position where I've started this group locally and with our Freedom Cell, and really not knowing what to do and not having the best experiences in running some kind of organization or group. And so a lot of it has been like figure it out as you go. And so it's constantly a learning experience that I've found. And that's it pushes you to grow a lot. But what I mean, I'm continuing to, find a lot of things that, I can do better and things that I need to work on. And getting people together in a group and having like um, good feedback and finding people that can work with you that are gonna help you with what you're doing in the group in and of itself. Like that is a whole interesting dynamic, because you have all these different personalities of people, and you have some people that are more dedicated than other people, and then um, planning things out and making sure that all that planning and stuff takes place. It can be a challenge.
Yeah. I think along with there may be a trilemma in terms of different characteristics of not quite arrogance, but really strong levels of confidence and humility. And then maybe the third level that full third leg to the stool is a willingness to do a thankless job. And it really is, no news is good news. That's kind of what a good leader has to be willing to accept as the thank you is, as long as no one's complaining about the results, I don't really need thanks. Because they know that people just kind of naturally expect things to work. They're just going to work out. And that is, I think good, competent leaders know nothing just works out. Nothing just happens. It takes good leadership to make sure everything's coordinated, to motivate people to do the right thing at the right time. And so I've seen plenty of projects and plenty of endeavors where things went smoothly, and the leader they're just kind of standing there, and there's no recognition of what they did and how much they had to sacrifice to make something happen. So I think a good leader kind of puts that in there as, I'm willing to risk a bad reputation when things don't work out, and then I'm also willing to just accept this quietly without much praise and thanks.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I mean it really is, it really is a tough thing, and you've given a lot of book references to look at for people that are interested in this, and that if you wanted to develop this within yourself further, because I think we do live in a time now that it is going to be more important for folks that want to live in more autonomy,
Mm-hmm.
that they take on some capabilities that they may not believe that they have, and being a leader of some form, I think, will be important.
Yeah.
Moving into the future, and it's something that I've talked about quite a bit. Is like you have that ability within you. We talked about learned helplessness recently,
Mm,
and how that can affect a lot of people, but there is always that quality. I think if you've ever organized a party before and you've had some folks like to a
that's right.
party, and you understand how to throw a party, that you're a leader,
Yeah,
so
that's right. That's actually a pretty good example. That's almost like a great fun embodiment of those three pillars, right? Is you got to have the a little bit of attitude of like, my party's a good party, you should attend it. And then there's the other side of like, people may not attend my party, and then people typically don't thank the host for putting on a great party. They're like, I had a great time, and that's it. So yeah, that's a pretty good reference. I like that.
yeah.
I was listening to one thing that radio talk show host Glenn Beck has talked about quite a bit. Is he said, and I'm going to try to quote this as best as I can: if we want government to do less, we have to step up and do more. And I think that's so important. Is this kind of gets into the rugged individualism of the United States. When people have asked me like, what's made the United States so successful? Obviously, things like the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. But something else I think is important is, in a way, we're a nation of rogues. That we are typically not the people who want to just follow like sheep whoever's out front. That doesn't mean that we don't recognize good leaders. Patton talked about this quite a bit. But we demand success as a people, and many times, and I think you touched on this really well, is if someone's not being a leader, an American somewhere is going to step up, and they're going to try to lead and get something done, and in a thankless fashion, right? And I think that's been part of our success as a country, is that we understand excellence cannot be legislated. There's no Congress or Parliament that can ever mandate leadership. They can't mandate excellence. And that always has to come endogenously, has to come from within. And as Americans, we are rogues. We don't sit around and wait for people to tell us what to do, on average. And I think it gets into what you talk about, that we all have in some capacity, just more, some more or less than others. And I think that's such an important aspect to keep in mind is, we don't have to have people who are leading hundreds of people in a single team. It could literally be someone sees a pothole in a road and they just fill it in with some gravel, right? It's just that simple, right? Just as a temporary measure. That's a form of leadership. They see something needs to get done and they just take care of it to the best of their ability on their own. And then maybe the next week they go to the city council and say, hey, there's a pothole that needs to be taken care of. Can you take care of it? That's leadership. It's a team of one, but they see that something needs to be done, and then they take initiative to get it done. And I think America, for 250 years has kind of been at the forefront of exhibiting great leadership, not just within the country, but around the globe as well.
Do you think that entrepreneurship and starting your own business, do you think that develops leadership quality?
That's a really good question. I think it's a chicken and the egg situation. Is a person naturally a good leader, and so they wanted to do this, or did they have leadership qualities imbued into them in childhood and as a young adult, because they saw the value of being on a good team, they saw the value of working for a good leader, and they say, wow, they really accomplished a lot. I liked working on a good team. I want to make that happen as well. My short answer is I don't know, right? I don't know if I'm naturally I don't know if I'm naturally a good leader, and B, I don't know if that's something that was just naturally within me at the somatic gene level. I do know that I've been on really good teams, and I've admired the leaders that I've worked for. So at least I know that was a factor, right? It's the nature versus nurture. But I do think that as Americans, high levels of entrepreneurship are there. And you know, another thing that I've heard Rush Limbaugh talk about is one of the most important aspects of our Constitution is it gets government out of the way, right? And we know we so many of us who watch this broadcast, who are, you know I do this broadcast. I think we definitely have the attitude of, government, I don't need you to help me do anything. I just need you to get the flock out of my way, right? And so in doing so, that promotes entrepreneurship, that promotes innovation, right? And so there's a fixed number of leaders, and the only thing government can do is just decrease the number of leaders, or is there a feedback loop of leadership? I'm not sure. I've never really studied it, but I think that there are definitely factors in terms of, can government get in the way of good leaders? And then when it's not in the way, is it fostering an environment of more leadership, greater leadership?
So Saomi asked this question, is that what do you think leadership means? What key qualities or behaviors you believe differentiate exceptional leaders from the rest? So yeah, I guess we could talk about that for a second on the exceptional leaders. And you did give me some notes on some characteristics. Be willing to go against the groupthink, clearly defined vision, the ability to articulate that vision, continuity and legacy.
Yeah, those are kind of some of the top four things I could think of, and we covered that at the beginning. We're willing to make mistakes, to take the hits. I think also a good leader will question why they want to do that, right? Do they want to be in that position, or they want to get shit done? And I think that is something that all good leaders have to ask themselves, pretty much on a daily basis. Why am I here? Why am I doing this? Am I doing it for the accolades? Am I doing it because I see a need that needs to be, or I see a deficiency that needs to be fulfilled? I think that's really important. So Xiaomi, that's a really good question, and I tried to summarize it in one sentence. And good leadership is getting people to do things enthusiastically they don't normally want to do. And I think that's what leadership is, and I think that's the hallmark of a good leader is a good leader can get people to do things where they're like, I don't want to do that. I'm not doing that. But a good leader can turn people around. They can motivate them to see the value of taking care of the undesirable stuff, the stuff that's not so glamorous, and say, yeah, I'll do that. I'll take care of it. And I've seen this so many times. Good leaders, they just have this really great charisma around them, and they can just rally people around them. And that's the hallmark of a good leader right there.
Is a good leader confident, would you say?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people who they're just good people. They're just good-hearted people, and they know that there's a deficiency and it's got to get fixed. But they're not good leaders. They don't have good vision. They cannot articulate that vision. They're not charismatic. They don't know how to rally people around, and they don't know how to utilize basic organizational skills. I talked a little bit about that in the book Small Unit Leadership by Colonel Dandridge Malone, and he had a four-part methodology, which is analyze, organize, deputize, and supervise. And basically, analyze is where the leader goes in, takes a look at what's happening, kind of gets a flavor and a feel for what's happening, And it could be order, it could be chaos. Organize is where they say, okay, let's create order out of this chaos and actually make a sustainable organization. Deputize is where they start to develop younger leaders, either to help the main leader, run the organization, or actually develop a younger leader to actually take over that job. And then supervise is where that leader can step back and just make sure things are running, but they know that they put in the right policies and procedures and leadership, the right people in place, that they can step back competently because they've built the watch, and they run the watch, and they can let the watch run. And I think a good leader knows how to do that. Maybe not with that level of exactness that I talked about, but they kind of get it at a gut level. There are so many people I've seen who are supposed to be leaders who can't do that. And what do we call them? Micromanagers. Okay. Right? Every decision's got to go through them, and they don't have the ability to engage in strategic thinking. And that's probably another really key characteristics of a good leader is true strategic thinking. And that requires layers and layers of abstraction, right? Good leaders know how to talk in abstraction about leadership qualities and organizational management. And I've met several people in my life who I would call ultra tactical, and they're almost the antithesis of strategy.
Okay. Yeah, I've seen that. I've seen that. It's like you do need to have the people on your team that you can delegate. I guess you can delegate some things to, so that it's not totally up to you for all the decision making all the time. You need to find people that have the ability to do certain things, and then elevate them to take on and be the champion of those things, and fill in where you're weak at. So, but then still have that strategic vision, and like you said, like that's difficult to develop though. Like,
it is.
Do you think that this stuff has been studied quite a bit by the military, and how all these units work? And I remember you talking about how there would be a way that you would, I guess, find the people that could be like disruptors in the group or whatever, and then you kind of find how you can build better cohesion by are those disruptor people, are they like potential leaders that are challenging the person or whatever, but but they haven't had to step up to be a leader yet or something like that?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think that it falls into two categories. There are the permanent malcontents, and then there are the rogues. The permanent malcontents, it kind of goes back to our last episode of learned helplessness. These are the people who, no matter what happens, they're always going to complain. And no matter what decisions made, no matter what the outcomes are, then the permanent malcontent is always going to say, well, that was the wrong decision. There's never going to be a right decision, right? And so that's not good enough. And also decisions where you at least get halfway decent results, not great results, but just halfway decent. That's definitely, the bane of good leadership, according to the permanent malcontents, right? But then there's the other side. There are the rogues who, it's some level, I think it's kind of unconscious, where they know it could be better, but they've never been put into a position of leadership. And so they sit there and snipe from the corners And they, on the surface, they look like malcontents. They look like jerks, honestly. But I think a good leader recognizes who those rogues are, and they know to actually pull them in even closer and put them in a position of leadership. And it could be something real simple, right? It could be you're on a team of 2, and I need you folks to go out there and make sure road cones are lined up properly. That may be all it is, right? But it's important. And I think a good leader knows how to recognize that. The malcontents are the ones who should be pariahs. They need to be ostracized and marginalized and put to the outside so they cannot spread toxicity within the group. And the rogues, in some ways, need to be brought in and shown like, hey, I believe in you. I think you could be a good leader. And a rogue, it by itself isn't necessarily a bad thing. In some ways, all good leaders are rogues because they're doing the exact opposite of what the majority wants to do. That's roguish behavior, right? Yeah. And so a good leader kind of recognizes that. And I've seen people who I thought they were just real a-holes. And as it turns out, they were just rogues. They just need some direction. They just need an opportunity of someone to believe in them. And I've realized, oh, that's what that was. That person was just a natural leader. They just didn't know it, and I didn't know it either. So I appreciate good leaders who can recognize that. And that's part of the deputized step within that 4-step process is recognizing people who probably could be good leaders if they're given a chance. And then part of step 4 in that supervise is where the first leader is mentoring the junior leader, right? And they're saying, hey, here's an area where you got an 8%, done. That's good. Here's the 20% where you missed it. And I'm going to give you some feedback on that. So that's part of what I call continuity and legacy, is where a good leader understands that they could be gone. We call it hit by the bus philosophy, right? Is if I get hit by a bus and I'm gone, does this organization persist? And I think that good leaders, they take that on as a mentality from day one. Is if something happens to me, how do I leave this? And they are typically humble people because they are willing to give up the reins. I think that the micromanagers are the complete antithesis of that. They want to get themselves embedded in every process, every procedure out there, and the continuity and legacy is completely antithetical to their philosophy as a leader. So those younger rogues will never be developed.
Well, that's probably a good segue into this question. What are the best example of men and individually showing leadership that you have seen firsthand from Sonomi?
You want to talk about one, bro?
Well, for myself, like I have a group of guys that I hang out with regularly, and that my buddy and his dad are like there are a couple of examples to me of good leadership, because it's more of just how they live their life and how they operate. And what I see with them is that it's something that I want to emulate myself, and them being like, entrepreneurial. They really are focused on their families, and they're really focused on staying healthy and taking care of their body. And and then they're willing to share their knowledge and to be real open, and like be able to take any kind of questions that you might have for them, and give you their knowledge directly on what you can do to better yourself and to move in a positive direction. And a lot of times it's just like what they do, and what I see from them is something that I would like to emulate myself.
Yeah. I think that's really important. What you're saying is that we seek out the people who we want to imitate and then emulate, right? And we surround ourselves with those good people. We all know the trope about, you are the five people we hang out with the most, right? I think that's important. For me, I'll go to the first group that we're typically with is family. And, I was pretty fortunate. I think my parents did a really good job. And they exhibited good leadership. They not often did they actually work for other people as employees. Now, obviously they did at the beginning, but they both ended up doing their own thing as entrepreneurs, having small businesses, and I think it's important. And then also, even if a person is not a business person, right? I think good parents exhibit good leadership qualities, where for them, their highest priority is, I want you to be better than me eventually. I want you to have more success, whatever that is, than what I've had. And they are not attention seeking. They are not. They don't need recognition, because we all know parenting is definitely a thankless job, right? But for them, they want to develop this little entity, this little unit, as best they can. And it could be something as simple as teaching them how to fish, right? How to do something on their own that's self-sufficient. My dad had me doing just basic carpentry work when I was a kid. And I learned, I don't want to be a carpenter. I didn't like it, but I knew I could do it. And I think that's important. Knowing that, making stuff happen actually requires all the detail work to put all this stuff together. So I would say for most people, having that leadership at home within the family is a huge step up for most people. That's going to be the first exposure to leadership that most people get. And if they don't get that, people can be listless for their entire lives. And I think it's huge. It's a wasted opportunity when they don't get that positive influence. And here's the cool thing about it. Whoever's the leader, in that family, they don't have to be a leader outside, right? It could be a person who literally works on automotive assembly line, but at home, they're the leader. And I think that's important. And I don't think we stress the importance of that enough in around the world, but especially in the United States. We don't express the importance of having strong families. And I think that's part of a strong family is that leadership quality at home, and just the willingness to do a thankless job and to take, every day as an opportunity to develop this child to be an adult. And at the beginning, getting the kid to maybe memorize the preamble to the Constitution, right? It's like, why do you gotta do that, right? But it's that development of this little young entity's mind into something that can be forged into some form of greatness. I think that's really important. That's what I would focus on. But obviously, there are plenty of other examples outside of that as well.
I wonder if being faced with some struggle and responsibility at a younger age develops a leader, because I've heard one story in particular about Richard Branson's mom. Supposedly, I've heard this story, or allegedly, like took him somewhere like miles away from their home and dropped him off,
Wow.
and then told him to find his way back home, and then just took off and left him.
Wow. All right.
And he said that stuck with him his entire life in how to, I guess, be able to solve problems and
Sure.
make things happen because
Yeah.
of that event that his mom did. Now, if you do that these days, you might get Child Protective Services calling
Yeah.
you or something like that. But
That's right.
But do you think that maybe facing some kind of adversity or where you're taking on some responsibility, does that maybe build some leadership qualities in you
Yeah.
earlier on?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I remember my parents told me that when I was younger, they would deliberately just leave the house for a short period of time, like 5 minutes. And they were trying to instill in me the idea that I could be independent, right? And then it would be a bit longer, maybe 10 minutes, right? And I'm not sure. So I don't know the story. I could definitely see that happen to Branson. He's a pretty interesting individual. And I don't know if the mother went from 0 to 60 in doing that. Like she just decided one day I'm going to do this, or if she developed him over the course of time, right? I hope that story is true in a way that she developed him to do that. But I think I agree with you. You know, there has to be that exogenous, that external forcing function to get us to go do things, right? Obviously, the exceptional leaders, they're very internally driven, right? They have that internal motivation, and they're going to push. That's a really rare breed that does that. Unfortunately, many times we have to have responsibility heaped onto us to get us to do these things. So yeah, I think that's what we have to do. And it could be small things. Obviously, for a child, it needs to be small things, right? That's crawl, walk, run. And you know, in special forces, they have the 4 P's: preview, present, practice, perform. And that's what teaching anyone a new skill. It's like preview, here's what I'm going to show you. Present, here's what I am showing you. Practice, let's give you some opportunities to put this in action. And then perform is the test, right? And it's crawl, walk, run, basically. And I think that, you know, if we look at this from a strategic point of view, our entire lives are just a series of mini preview, present, practice, perform, preview, present, practice, perform. And we just do that all through our lives, and the challenges become greater and greater. And you know, one could even say there's a 5th P in there, potentiation. I think we talked about this last episode. The potentiation is the increase of one's potential, right? And when we're kids, we have very little potential, right? But as we have new skills, potentiation happens, and our potential grows in a commensurate fashion with our skills. So I think that, yeah, I think I agree with you. You know, that good parenting means challenging that kid in whatever way that they can. It doesn't mean that the kid has to be a leader. It's just like, I think you have a talent in one area, and I'm gonna help you develop that talent. And that's a hard thing, because it requires the kid to do things they don't want to do.
Now, you mentioned the term strategic thinking earlier, yeah, and having that be one of the attributes of a good leader. What is strategic thinking?
Strategic thinking would be.
I do have something pulled up for that.
Yeah, so I'm going to call it at a very abstracted, very vague level, is pattern recognition. Is where one particular instance of an event happening does not a pattern make, but a person sees a series of events happening, and they're able to pull out the pattern out of that. That's strategic thinking, basically. And then I guess what goes along with that is recognizing that there is a problem, and then being able to come up with a solution and finally implement that solution. So it's probably those 4 levels: pattern recognition, problem recognition, solutioning, and then implementation on there. And it involves many levels of abstraction to get to that point. And I think it's most people, unfortunately, don't have the ability to do that. Unfortunately, I wish more people did, but I think that the people who are true strategic thinkers, they have the ability, many times, not always, but many times, they have the ability to kind of convey what their vision is. In doing that. Unfortunately, there are plenty of strategic thinkers who are not good communicators as well.
So that can kind of bring up this question here is how does one honestly assess perception of one's own strengths and weaknesses if those around us are not aware or they are not honest?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
I think you have to kind of maybe you have to take a look at yourself too.
Yeah, exactly. And I apologize to any Shakespeare enthusiasts out there. So if I mess this up, please forgive me. But what's the quote? To thine own self be true. Right. I think it's so important. Is we have to be just brutally honest with ourselves. And one of the books I referenced in the reference list is From Good to Great. And the author looked at, I think, literally thousands of companies. I think they were publicly traded companies, and looked for ones that had a turnaround story. And I think he narrowed it down to only 11 companies that made the cut in terms of ones that he wanted to examine. And one of the key attributes was developing a culture of honesty and brutal honesty, where they're looking at themselves with brutal honesty, and that was so important. And so that willingness to have humility, to say, yeah, regardless of the outcomes, I'm going to do an honest assessment. Did the outcomes work or not work? Were they good or not good, or maybe even a detriment? So I think that a good leader knows how to, right, be humble, right, and it's part of that triumvirate, if you will. And then there's a whole bunch of ways that can happen, and of trying to create objective measures, right? And I think a good leader, in some way, shape, or form, tries to create objective measures whenever possible. It's not always possible, right? But they try to, and then they gauge themselves against that, against those objective measures. And sometimes those objective measures, sometimes they're just crap. They're just not good measures. But that's just part of a good leader's the development of their gut, their instinct, right? What makes good leadership? So, Xiaomei, I think that's a really good question. I really appreciate you asking that. In the absence of feedback, how does one do that? And I will say, for me, there is. So if we go with the idea of a willingness to be wrong, I'm willing to be wrong about something, and so I'm willing to make a decision and take the hits, right or wrong, right, and then realize that the thing that I did today is just a small representation of life, and that the next thing I do is a little bit bigger, and the thing after that is even bigger, and realize that a failure today is tomorrow's success. I remember I was being interviewed by someone, and she asked me, what was your best failure, or what was your most successful failure? And I love the way she worded it. And it was, we hear people say, I learn more from my failures than my successes. Mm-hmm. And I think good leaders, they really embrace it. That's not just something they put up with. They embrace that idea that when I failed, okay, I learned something really valuable. And I think a good leader kind of takes that on, is they embrace the pain. They embrace change, and they understand that in order for me not to make that success at the beginning, they're willing to incorporate those failures for the next endeavor. And that's part of that almost ultra strategic viewpoint that a good leader has, is they realize this tiny failure that I had here today can become tomorrow's great success later on. So I think that's really important. And I also talk about that in the book, 33 Strategies of War. 33 Strategies of War. And Robert Greene talks about that, is the idea of declaring war on oneself, first and foremost, right? Because there's really only two struggles that we deal with, internal and external struggles. And he talks about that. I think he has 4 major parts in the book. And right in part 1, he talks about you got to declare war on yourself. And that requires discipline. It requires being brutally honest with oneself and be willing to take those hits. And so Sienna, I hope I mentioned your question around this, is being able to do all those things, and they're not easy. They are almost the antithesis of what we want to do at an instinctual level, right? We want to run away from the pain, and I think good leaders embrace it.
Yeah, and a lot of times a self-assessment, because I think in our minds we have this view of ourselves as maybe like kind of the idea of the Dunning-Kruger, where we estimate our capabilities when we don't quite have the knowledge that is required to attain or carry out that thing. And that looking at yourself, it can be quite difficult, because we have these kind of layers of our personality built into us over time that may be running on autopilot and we're not aware of it. And so I do think that if you put yourself out there in any kind of way, like, you're gonna get feedback from people.
Yeah,
like they're gonna give
good
you
or bad.
they're gonna give you feedback. Like, and so I would say maybe it's in that discomfort that you're gonna figure out some new things about yourself. And when you challenge yourself, that some of these things may pop up that you were unaware of through that challenge. So brings on Xiaomi's next question. How can those skills be fully developed and executed?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, well, I guess I'm, just thinking in my own life, is that the only times that I've grown significantly has been through challenging myself. It was for a long time thinking about developing some kind of idea for a format of doing a podcast, and would anybody even want to listen to it, and do I have important things to say, and that what you can kind of get into this kind of analysis paralysis mode of things. But it wasn't until I realized that no one gets it correct, on the jump. You have to engage in something first, and then you're gonna suck at it. And you're gonna suck at it, and if you never start doing something, then there's no way to improve. So it really, in my own life, it took just getting started with something. And it's a continuous learning experience. Even however long you do something, you're still going to be constantly learning. And once I think you stop learning, then you start to slowly die, because it is one of those things that if you once you can start to stagnate, it does feel like that feeling of like you're falling into that kind of learned helplessness mentality, I think.
That's a very good point.
So putting yourself through some challenges is, I think, part of that whole growth process. But it's scary, man. It's scary to do that. Like, there's a lot of fear there. And I remember some of the first times that I went up and did some public speaking, and I just was a complete nervous wreck, like reading completely off of my presentation slides.
Yeah.
And just fumbling through everything and just being so conscious of how I looked in front of people and what people were thinking of me and all this kind of stuff. And it was a train wreck. It was a train wreck. It was a complete and utter train wreck.
Yep.
And through doing that and doing that more times and just continuing that process of getting in front of people and getting more and more comfortable by doing those presentations, that you start to develop a resistance to those feelings, or at least you get more comfortable in the situation.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that anytime I get in front of people, I'm not really nervous and I have those nerves, but by doing that over and over, I think most of the things in life it's about repetitions.
Yeah.
And you have to do enough reps to start getting comfortable with something.
Yeah.
So I think that's one way that I've found in my life. And, still got a lot of growing to do myself.
Yeah.
But those are some things that have helped me.
Yeah. I think what you said almost at the very beginning was just be willing to take that first step. Just try. Just be willing to be messed up. To be willing to make a lot of mistakes, be willing to take a lot of hits, be willing to be wrong. If a person is willing to do that, they will probably not be a good leader. They will probably never get off zero, if you will. And I think that's the thing that pulls people back the most, is they're looking to have this great performance the first time out of the gates. And either they know at some level they won't be perfect the first time around, so they just don't try, or they do try one time, it's not perfect, and so that prevents them from ever going back and even trying again. That's so hard. And it's really easy, especially in today's highly connected age, to kind of be beat down, because we see people who are really refined, some really good leaders out there, some really good presenters out there. And even in the movies or TV shows where they can have multiple takes, where, a person can give a great speech. We don't realize all the time it took for that person to give a really good speech, and all the takes it took to give a speech that was flawless. So I think that can be a deterrent from people trying, is they don't see all the screw ups that happened, all the lessons learned right up to that final moment. And so it's really intimidating to be like that. The good leaders, what's that old trope? How did I come to exercise such good judgment? By exercising a lot of bad judgment. And they were willing to take the hits and just try something out that may or may not have worked. So just getting off zero is probably the most important thing. and just be able to stick with it, for a while. It's not easy. In fact, sometimes it just downright sucks. I will say there's a decent Steven Seagal movie. It's near the beginning of his movie career, called Under Siege, and this is Under Siege 2, and the antagonist of the movie had an expression, and I'm paraphrasing, basically, fortune favors the prepared mind, I think it was. And you're talking about your presentation that you did, and it was just not fun to do, I'm sure. And I'm sure that you probably recognized, oh, this is a mistake. I didn't do this well. I should have. I could have done this better, right? All these things. Well, you take all those things and you turn them into lessons learned, and you roll it into the next event, right? And you prepare for it, right? I remember one time I had I think I dropped like ketchup on my shirt, and that was embarrassing, right? So what am I going to do? The next time I'm about to do a presentation, I'm either not eating a hamburger with ketchup on it, or I'm going to have like a really good napkin. I know that sounds stupid, but it's those little things that we do in preparation, right? That favors success. And it could be anything. Or it could be making sure that I work on my presentation well enough for the previous month, for this final moment that's perfection, at the end, or really close to perfection. So it's that preparation that really favors the outcome. And there's another one that I heard I really like, is I found the harder I worked, the luckier I got. And I think that's so important, to have that attitude of, I'm going to put in so much time to prepare for this thing that when it happens, it looks effortless. And people they're just impressed with that, but not seeing all the hard work that it took to get to that. And I think a good leader is willing to do that. They don't just step up, at the last minute and just try to throw something together. Good leaders working behind the scenes, and they're putting stuff together that most people don't see. There's another great trope I like, which is amateurs discuss tactics, professionals discuss logistics and supply. And logistics and supply is really, really dry stuff. It is very unromantic. We want to focus on the tactics of doing something, but supply and logistics is all the preparations, all the stuff that's behind the scenes that has to be put in place, right? So that way something actually happens. And I think that's probably a major difference between wannabes and true leaders.
It's definitely a process that you have to go through to find it within yourself. I think all these things can be developed in people, and that people have the capabilities within them to do this, but you have to, like you said, you have to be willing to face those challenges. And I like what you said about being humble, because I think on the opposite end of the spectrum, you can get into the negative kind of leader, right? The leader with bad intentions, or the leader that is all about their praise for themselves and their acknowledgement, and that can build into an overly inflated sense of ego, and can lead to a tyrannical leader.
Yeah,
I would say.
Yeah, I think right. I think I agree with it. At a minimum, they're toxic, right? In some ways, there's the two extremes of involvement. The micromanager, not only do they want to be involved with the tiniest decision, they demand to be involved at the tiniest level of decision making, right? And then there's the other side is they don't want to be involved with anything at all. They don't want to. They have no willingness to roll up their sleeves and dig down deep into something to see why something is broke down, why something's wrong. And so I think that in those instances, those leaders have no ability to interface with their team members. They have no ability to relate to their team members, and all they want is to be. They just want adoration, right? And I think that that's a really toxic trait as well. So a good leader, they know how to be somewhere in the middle of that scale of ultra tactical involvement versus almost zero involvement.
Yeah, you mentioned that kind of passing on the baton to other people and training up other people along with you, and I think that is a a really good quality of a leader, is that you don't want to be the central focus. You'd like other people to take on the challenge as well and to build them up with the people that you find that are potential leaders themselves.
Yeah.
That you build them up along with you, and in a lot of these groups and a lot of the efforts where people are gathering together, I think that it, like we're talking about, it can be where one of the leaders may have to the lead. You want several people to take on the challenge, I think, because with like a successful team or something like that, what happens if that leader is gone? How is that group or is that team going to, I think it, in a certain aspect, you kind of have to have somebody in any group kind of be the champion of it, right? Like you have to have somebody be the champion of it, but you also want it to, if you want it to have, like you're saying, a legacy, there has to be like a way that people are, I guess, in enough with the vision that are willing to take it on, or maybe it gets adapted and turned into something different, but or maybe that original vision was not the thing that gets carried on, but I think it's important to like you said, have some kind of legacy where at least whoever's taking over a leadership position in the future, that they're going to be the good leader, right?
Yeah.
And not go down the negative pathway.
Yeah. I found that, so I've led quite a few projects in my professional career, and I found that almost a quarter of my time was spent just selling stuff, selling ideas. And I don't mean like I'm selling, a product, but just selling ideas, selling concepts, trying to sell someone on the idea of executing against a certain methodology. And I didn't understand that when I first started doing this sort of thing, that so much of my time would be spent just in doing sales, right? And of course, that was always internally, right? Selling people on my project team why we need to do this or why we should not do that. And I think that requires a person who's willing to be, go back to the point you made before, who's willing to be that that bullhorn of saying, okay, we need to do this, we need to do A, then we need to do B, then we need to do C, and actually be willing to convince people of why something, should or should not happen. Now I know that there's that rule in the 48 laws of power. Win through your achievements, not your arguments, or demonstrate, don't explicate. Right? There's that aspect of it. But sometimes in a project, you don't have that opportunity to wait until the results. Like everything's preparation, right? And then then the work gets done. But I didn't understand how important that was as a project manager or even a business analyst to be able to sell people on concepts and the amount of time it can take just to convince people without debating and without arguing. That was a really hard thing for me to comprehend. I thought they were basically, selling and debating. I thought they were the same thing. And I royally screwed up plenty of opportunities by my misconstruing those two things. And so I think that a good leader either has that ability naturally or they have to develop it. And so I didn't have that ability naturally. I had to develop that over time. But that was only because I saw the necessity of people not doing certain things that I thought that they should have, and realizing they don't just grasp it just because I think it. That doesn't mean anything, right? And so that was something really hard for me to comprehend and to accept, and then also change my behaviors in a positive fashion. So that was it was a great lesson learned to be able to do that.
Yeah. Working on a team. I've been a lot in my life, like kind of I remember in like school projects and stuff like that, it would like especially in some engineering things, it was there were different people that had different capabilities, and then when it came to like building things, like I was pretty good at that, but these other guys were more into like the design aspects of things. And so I really gravitated toward like the building type stuff, but then the other people in our group, like it wasn't as much of a team thing. It was more like, since it would take so long to explain how to do the building processes and stuff, it was just like me taking that on instead of like getting the other people involved. So yeah, it's like it's kind of hard, especially with, I guess you've seen this in project management quite a bit, is like how do you appropriately delegate certain things?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is there's that the barbell, right, or the seesaw of being too involved, right, trying to micromanage every decision versus not being involved at all, completely hands off, completely laissez-faire, right? And I found that the most effective tool or methodology that I had was probably two parts: was soliciting the team's opinions on what the outcome should be, and then either just outright prescribing or working with the team to define what are the first principles that need to be followed, and then what is the methodology for getting those outcomes. And if I could do that, and that requires strategic thinking, right? Because it's the exact opposite of tactical. I'm not telling them how they must do something. I'm not telling them what the decision-making process should be. I'm just saying, here are the principles, here are the guiding principles, and then here's probably the methodology that needs to be followed. And then you go ahead and implement it. But you got to stay within these two boxes, the first principles and then the methodologies. I don't care how you get there, but you got to stay within these two boxes, these two guardrails, if you will. And that was also something that was really that was frustrating for me to learn how to be hands off in
You have to
the right amount.
you have to let go of control, right?
Yeah. And and I'm fortunate that I did recognize that characteristic of myself is the too much willingness to get in and try to guide every little thing, right? And knowing that I have a pretty good vision, right, in terms of seeing how things need to proceed and then what the outcome should be. And when someone doesn't do exactly the way I wanted, right, OCD can flare up at that point, right? So I had to learn how to let go, right, and just be very principles oriented. Here are your guiding principles, and here are your methodologies. Just go do that. And if they get 80% there, like, okay, that's pretty good, right? And the areas where they fell short, where they didn't follow the principles and they didn't follow the methodology, give them feedback and say, hey, you didn't follow, stage 4 of the methodology, whatever that is, and you need to go back and revise this, fix it. And part of that, by the way, is salesmanship, right? I can't just hand them some document and say, you must follow this way, right? You must have these principles and you must use this methodology. I got to sell it to them. I got to get their buy-in, because if they haven't bought in, they're just going to say, go F yourself. I'm just not going to do it. You do it, right? And that's where the salesmanship, that's where that charisma comes into play. And that's where, I think that's what makes a good leader, is the getting buy-in from the other side on there. So that was, once I learned how to be strategic in my approach, then my professional life got a whole lot easier.
I like what you said there about getting the feedback, because I've interviewed several guys and I have asked them about different aspects of leadership. And one of the gentlemen that I interviewed, his name's Michael Nimitz, and he worked in the construction industry for a long time and worked up to be doing like really large building projects and stuff like that. And one of the things that he told me that made him quite successful in it was that all of his guys respected him, because he did exactly what you were saying. He asked the guys that were doing the work, how can we do this better?
Yeah.
What do you think that we can implement in what you're currently doing that is going to make the job better? And, whether that be like better tools for you, or like, maybe there's some efficiency way that you figured out that we could teach the other guys, or something like that.
Yeah.
And that approach gained him a ton of respect, instead of him coming down and barking orders and yelling at people when they did something wrong, and getting in their face about stuff that wasn't done correctly. He pretty much gave his guys autonomy to do their job the best way that they know how to do, and then to basically facilitate anything that that they needed to make their job better. So that was one key thing that I took away from what he was talking about in his experience, was that that feedback mechanism, right?
Yeah.
Because then you're allowing your group, the people that you're working with, to shine their best, because they have the most on the ground knowledge in the area that they're in to make the project work a lot better.
Yeah, I think Patton was a huge advocate of that. And here's the funny thing about it. Patton led Third Army, right? Which at the end of the war had 500,000 men working for him. So the one extreme is 500,000 men, and the other extreme is like the example you just talked about, which could have been, I'm just taking a guess, maybe it's a dozen men, right? It doesn't matter. The principle's still the same, right? And Patton, I'm paraphrasing, he said, don't tell your subordinates how to do their job. Just tell them what you want accomplished and let them surprise you with their creativity. And I thought that was great. And if you think about it, that's a great way to develop leadership, is, a willingness to let subordinates make mistakes, right? Because that's part of leadership is willingness to make mistakes, and then give them constructive criticism, right? Don't tear them down, right? But give them constructive criticism. Say, hey, you got 80% of the way there. Good job. Here's the last 20%. Here's where maybe you missed the mark, but that's okay, right? You'll get it the next time. And I think that's actually what I found is one of the best selling tools that I ever had was letting the team members come up with a solution, right? If they came up with it, I don't have to sell them on anything, right? They've already sold themselves. The only thing I'm doing is just checking. Are they hitting first principles and methodologies, right? And do I think it's going to generate the intended outcome? If that's the case, that's awesome. They've already bought in.
Excellent.
Yeah. Another great book I recommend is The Soul of Battle by Victor Davis Hanson. And he focused on generals Epaminondas from ancient Greece of the city Thebes, General William Tecumseh Sherman, we all know from the American Civil War, and General George S. Patton. And, you know, it was hard to get a lot on General Epaminondas because that happened in 70 BC. Hard to get a lot of detail around him, but with General Patton and General Sherman, they were very much oriented towards I'm gonna set things up and I'm gonna let my subordinates actually execute against that. And you know, very much into the idea of like letting the subordinates, you know, run with things, and being as hands off as possible, and not trying to micromanage. And I thought that was a really great thing that Hanson pointed out in his book. It's a great book. I really recommend anyone read it. And it puts he has a great intro talking about World War II. And his portrayal of General Patton was just phenomenal in terms of his move after D-Day, taking Third Army from Normandy all the way into Berlin. And I just learned so much about Patton. I already had a great deal of respect for General Patton, but my level of respect just went up, you know, exponentially after reading that book.
I've heard the stories about Patton or the Germans talking about the Americans during World War II, that they were talking about how the Americans never had a plan, and so they couldn't figure out what they were going to do next or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
It's like,
that's right.
Well, we can't figure out their plans because it seems like they don't have any. they're just completely acting spontaneously, and we can't figure out what they're doing.
Yeah. You know, so I think that's a really good point. And I've heard this before. So I've heard that before. So that's a great call up. And the other part is, of all the generals they did not want to face, it was Patton, because Patton was so effective. And he was really, and Hanson talks about this quite a bit in his book, The Soul of Battle, is he avoided direct action. And he really hated frontal assaults. He was all about indirect maneuver and advancing to the rear, you know, attacking the enemy where they were the weakest, attacking their supply points, their fuel depots, anything like that. And you know, that was so important to Patton. And what was the point you were just making?
That the Germans couldn't figure out.
Yeah. They were almost afraid of Patton. In fact, the Allies knew that they were afraid of Patton, and so they created a fictitious army for Patton to to go after. And something else that I've seen, and I really didn't grasp this until recently, that the Nazis were, and also Imperial Japan, they were all about like everything had to be perfectly planned out to the last detail. And that ended up being to their detriment. Whereas with the Allies, they were more first principles oriented. It's like, look, if it gets us to the target, if it gets us to Berlin, then we're going to do that, whatever that is. And if you take a look at the invasion of Normandy all the way into Berlin, Generals Eisenhower, Mark Clark, Omaha Bradley, Montgomery, they were all about very clean lines. We're gonna work in an orderly fashion. And Patton's like, no, I'm gonna go way the heck out here. I'm gonna attack from the rear. I'm gonna attack their sides. I'm gonna hit the obliques. I'm gonna move against their supply lines, and I'm gonna avoid as much direct action and frontal assault as possible. And Patton went literally twice as fast as all of the other armies that were out there. And Third Army literally covered twice as much territory, because of that. And Patton had this great capacity for visualizing the battle space. And that's why I think why the Nazis were so afraid of him is he has such an intuitive grasp because of years of experience of the battle space. And he didn't have to have a plan. He worked from first principles so well that as conditions changed, he changed with them. And evidence was that when the 101st Airborne Division got I'm going to say trapped, and he was able to pivot the entirety of Third Army in less than 48 hours, which is just unheard of at the time. And so that's part of the reason why the Nazis they really feared Patton.
Yeah. So have you always been kind of interested in these strategies and things, and developing leadership and self-improvement along those aspects? It's
Not always. When I was younger, no. It just, I was younger. I just cared about like science and math, and so I went to I went for a degree that kind of matched well. It was mechanical engineering. We're both mechanical engineering degrees. But I was involved with martial arts when I was relatively young. I was really fortunate that I got involved at 18 or 19 years old. It was really amazing school. Had two really good instructors, Soke Robert Murphy and Sensei Christopher Vigiano. And I was really impressed with what they were able to accomplish with this group of really motivated young men to learn martial arts. And I think that was kind of the beginning of appreciating good leadership, appreciating that one or two people can mold something out of nothing, right? And create something really great. And a lot of the guys I trained with, we still keep in touch. And then, joined the military. That was another great example of seeing the importance of good leadership, understanding that there's just a bunch of shitheads in a platoon or a company who don't know shit from Shinola, and it takes really strong leadership and a lot of pressure, constant pressure to get people to do something that they don't normally want to do, and that's a hard thing to do. And where I got that idea of getting people to do things they don't want to do is the book On Killing by Colonel David Grossman. And he talked about the idea that the military was really good at getting people to do things they don't normally want to do, including turning, facing an ambush and running right into that ambush to go cut it down. So it's just stuff like that. Reading some very influential books like About Face by Colonel David Hackworth. He was a big influence in my life. Richard Marcinko, he was a Navy SEAL in Vietnam. He called himself a rogue warrior. And that was definitely a formative book in my life. I think I read that book when I was like maybe 20 years old. And I did not have aspirations to become a SEAL, but I appreciated what Marcinko, did as a naval officer, as a SEAL officer, exhibiting good leadership in extreme conditions. So, as a young man, being able to see those effects of good leadership in extreme conditions. About Face is a thick book. It's a lot. But there's probably 3 major phases that Hackworth went through in his career as a military officer. There was the Korean conflict, Vietnam, and then his time in the Pentagon. And he was an officer's officer. He was a soldier's soldier. He was the guy who, in Korea and Vietnam, he was shoulder to shoulder with his men in the field, and he was sweating and bleeding right along with his men, and they respected him. And he pushed his men hard, but like the gentleman you were talking about, his men really respected him. He did not hang from the back. He was out there front, and he'd watch and observe things that would happen. And he was like Patton like that, in the sense that he knew he needed to be out front. Patton hated being in the rear, and Hackworth hated being in the rear as well. In fact, he made observations about how we were doing things in Vietnam, and we had these like entire bases over there. They'd have swimming pools, they'd have bars and stuff like that, and he hated that stuff. He's like, we are way too comfortable. We're creating comfort in a war zone, and that's preventing us from going out, finding the enemy, and killing them. And that's the last thing that we should be doing. But he was a soldier. Really, really appreciate him. So to answer your question, not always, but I was pretty fortunate to kind of stumble upon some things as I went along, and I wanted to challenge myself, by being in the martial arts and being in the military, and as I got older, I appreciated those lessons learned. I didn't know I was learning those lessons at the time of leadership, but just being able to incorporate these things over time was a huge benefit to me.
But you had the idea that you wanted to present yourself with a challenge, is what kind of your thinking was. Yeah.
I there were so many people who I had encountered either personally or I saw, even if I didn't know their name. I knew there was something about them that I really admired, and I really appreciated about them, and I knew that their experiences had forced them into being the people who they were at the time, and male and female, right? It didn't matter to me, and that was something that I appreciated, and I realized there's only one way to do it. It's just go do it, and take your hits, and be willing to make a lot of mistakes, and suffer through them, and that's what I try to do. I was definitely not perfect, far from it, but I think it was just the willingness to get off zero and just go do it was the biggest secret, the secret.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll do a little bit of a break here. You got a little video that we can share with people. Let's see. Is this one it?
So you have to start it over.
Okay. Yeah, let's
if you can. Yeah, there we go.
Just hear those sleigh bells ting-a-ling-a-ring-a-ting-a-ting-a-ling-a-too. Ring-a-ling-a-ling-a-ding-dong-a-ding. Come on, it's lovely weather for a sleigh ride together with a Jew. Outside the snow is falling and friends are calling you.
Just somebody's stomping on the cookies. Make them for you. Nice. I have one, and it's part of promotion for my upcoming solar event that I'm putting on, and so.
And what day is that for everyone?
November 15th. So
15th.
Saturday, November 15th, and we're going to have people out to my property to be showing you some stuff on how you can put together your own little solar power system for a backup power for your house. So like lights and maybe freezers. And the system would also be a good system for powering a small outbuilding or your garage or shop to run some tools, run your lights, and things like that as a kind of an emergency backup power or some power for a shop or an outbuilding or a small cabin. So this is a little video I put together for that event to for everybody to check out. Here we go.
Steve, what are you going to do if the power goes out and you can't chat with your AI girlfriend? What's your plan? Make your AI girlfriend happy. Learnify yourself. Get some knowledge. Learn about solar. Check out the Tinker Tribe event on November 15th.
Nice.
This is an example of a past project of about 14 kilowatts worth of solar that we helped install for a guy's house, and it was a really fun project. So there is a lot of experience that we're bringing to the table when you're coming out to check out this workshop. No cap. Check out the event in the description. It's going to be an empowering workshop where you're going to get hands-on experience.
You tired of feeling like a slut?
All right.
That's awesome, man. And were those the frames that you're working on a couple days ago?
Well, in that video, not in that video, that's a ground mount system, but or for a steel ground mount system.
Yeah, that's awesome.
But let's see. Oh, right there in the background of that video there, that is the ground mounts that are what we're going to be showing at the workshop. And those are all made out of treated lumber. And it's later on in that video, let's see. Let me pull it up here. Is us putting the ground mount system together. So it's just pretty basic. It's like 10 by 3 feet. You can set it on blocks, like cinder blocks, or we had some bricks out there just to elevate it up off the ground. And then it's just all 2x4 treated lumber and some brackets that we built out of aluminum so that it can sit on each one of those lumber frames. And then we just came up with a custom solution to attach the aluminum frame panels to a lumber ground mount system. So yeah, you can get really fancy with them and get steel ground mount systems, but you can make your own ground mounts with lumber, and it doesn't have to be super complex. So you just want to get an angle for set an angle for the season. It can be at a fixed angle, or in this case, it's on hinges, so
Okay.
it can be changed for the seasons.
That's really cool. So it's not it doesn't actively track, but you can periodically change the angle as needed. Is that right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
So the different seasons, it's just sitting on a lower frame structure, and then it's just got hinges so that right now it's at about like a 50-degree angle for the winter time.
Yep.
Because the sun is lower in the sky in the winter, so you need more of a vertical angle for the panels. And then it could be changed to more like a 30-degree angle for the summertime so that
Yeah.
it's more horizontal.
Yep.
Because the sun is going to be higher in the sky. So yeah, I just want to make sure that I put that on there because it does make it. You can set it kind of like at about like a 33 degree angle so that you can kind of catch some of the winters in the sun and then in the summertime.
Yep.
And you can fix the angle, but if you have the capability to change the angle for the seasons, you can increase your efficiency a little bit. So.
Yep. That makes sense. That looks like a really good compromise there, right? Because those active tracking systems, they get expensive and there's just more shit that can break versus if it's purely static, you can't make any adjustments at all. It looks like what you've designed really is almost like an optimal solution.
I've seen a bunch of different ways people have done it because I've been to some places where it's like a community out in Blount County where they're all living off grid and they're have their own different ways of building and powering their houses. And some of them are statically mounted, and then others had the ability to at least change for the seasons. And then I've done a few projects now, a few larger projects where we have we've done the ground mounts and just kind of statically mounted them so that it would kind of be optimal between seasons. Some of these larger solar arrays, they're quite, once you get like 10 of these like larger 400 watt panels on them, they're like extremely heavy. So you need like a tractor or something. But the cheapest like steel mounting systems, if you're going for a system that large, you're going to want to put them on some kind of metal frame, I would say. Yeah. Because it's just a huge amount of surface area that it's going to take up, and that last one that we did for somebody out in Athens, it has position that you can for the seasons, but you got to get out there with the tractor, take the load off to change it for each season. Just got some audio issues. Oh, great.
It just sounds a little washed out. So, I'm looking forward to going to the event. This would be great. And I'm curious to see how you set it up. And also one thing I'm curious about is for changing the angle, how do you determine what the angle should be? Do you just eyeball it? Do you have something that has a moderate amount of precision in there?
So for determining which angle is the best for the season or just for putting the angle on the frame?
The angle for the season.
So it's just more vertical. You just want to have it more vertical in the summertime, in the wintertime, and then more at a horizontal in the summertime. And then there's some guides on like determining the best angle that's appropriate for the season.
Yep.
So right now I've just kind of got it set at the general angle for the winter time.
Yeah.
And I think I haven't seen like a ton of data on showing like if you set it at X degree angle for this season, oriented south, that you're going to expect this much increase in solar gain. So I'm not certain on that number.
I think I saw a website where you plug in where you are on the planet, and then obviously the date and time, or I guess the date, and they will tell you what the angle is supposed to be. But then the other side is, how often are you really going to adjust that?
Yeah. So I think it is like you kind of just set it for the season, and then you can look at your power output on a lot of these charge controller inverter systems. You're going to kind of start learning over time because they do have ways that you can pull the data off of them now. Especially they connect. They'll mainly connect over Wi-Fi, or you can like plug in a laptop to them and have a data output from it. But a lot of them allow you to like monitor it via the Wi-Fi from your phone, and then you can log all your statistics over time. It'll log that for you.
That's cool.
So you can see the real time. You can see the real time data, and you can track it over time. So you can run some different little experiments with your system, and then see how the system's going to perform over time.
Yeah, that makes sense. That's really cool. I'm looking forward to it. So do you? I'm assuming that you combine that with a battery system as well.
Yeah, this system is going to use a lithium iron phosphate golf cart battery with a integrated battery management system for those lithium iron phosphate batteries. So, so you can DIY your own lithium iron phosphate battery bank and order like a separate BMS system, and put those cells together. But there's a lot of these different batteries out on the market now. This is going to be one that I'm going to implement at the cabin and kind of field test it to see its performance and see if it's something that I could recommend for the future, because it is one of the cheaper options when it comes to the lithium iron phosphate batteries, and for a small scale installation or a backup system, I'd like to see how it performs.
Yeah.
And so so it's kind of it's one of the cheaper options, because the two bigger costs for these systems is going to be in that charge controller inverter system and the battery itself, because or the batteries and the storage. The panels have come way down in price. When I first started getting into this, probably was back in 2017, and just started with powering my refrigerator. I just wanted to see if I could run my refrigerator off of a couple 300-watt solar panels. So I had about 600 watts of solar that I was gaining during the day, and was using wet cell golf cart batteries. And then back at that time, I bought like a pallet of panels, and then I was able to split that up with some people. And the best price I could get at that time was like 60 cents a watt. And some of the panels that I have and the panels that are going to be in the workshop that I'm doing, those were purchased for like 27 cents a watt. And then I think you can even get them for really stupid prices now for like, maybe 10 cents a watt. You can get them that cheap. And they're like, maybe not all the same kind of panel, but like it'll still produce power. So, so you can do all kinds of neat stuff with these panels now, and especially if you want to do just direct DC power. I talked to a guy recently that's doing a lot of stuff where he's just doing direct DC. But yeah, it's more simple now than it has been in the past, because of these systems where the charge controller inverters are doing a lot of stuff for you. And they're all integrated into these systems, and they become smaller and cheaper and more mass manufactured. So Yeah, I just wanted to get people familiar with what's out there now, and so that they're not so overwhelmed with this kind of stuff, because I think it's a lot of people think that about solar power as a little bit daunting.
Yep.
And it's not as daunting as you would imagine, especially now. So, and then getting your hands on something, I think you're going to learn more than what you can do in watching a video. So, so that's why I wanted to do the workshop.
That's awesome, man. Looking forward to it. Yeah, from what I've seen, those LiFePo batteries have come down a lot in price, and I guess the material science behind them is so good that they can offer great performance for very, very reasonable prices.
Yeah, they're the more safer battery option as well. They're more stable, and
Okay.
if, versus the earlier lithium ion batteries, which were a lot of battery packs being made out of these 18650 lithium ion or lithium polymer battery packs. They're a lot more unstable, and if they get overcharged, there's a potential of starting fires. Whereas these lithium iron phosphates, if they get overcharged, they're not going to have they're not going to go into a state where they're going to cause a fire. So they're the safer option.
Yeah.
And so those are the ones that I would definitely go with, are the lithium iron phosphate batteries now.
That's really cool. Yeah, I've seen some videos on the controllers, and I'm really impressed with how far they've come and their ability just to manage the entire system really for you. You can be very hands off of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool.
So yeah, Jay, let's conclude tonight. Where can people find you, follow you, and everything that you got going on?
Meetup.com, and if you I think Greg will have a link in the show notes, but if you go to meetup.com and Bitcoin, Huntsville, crypto, and coffee, this is a meetup that I started. We have some great attendees, and all we're trying to do is help people understand what Bitcoin is, how it works, and why it's so important for you. This is, as I tell people, this is not a once in a lifetime event. This is not a once in a generation event. It's a once in a species event. And I think we're all lucky that we get to be a part of it. This is how we spit ourselves out of the system. We eject ourselves from the matrix, is by implementing a hard money standard. I think that's so important. We've seen really for the past 2,000 years as countries start with a hard money standard and they go to a soft money standard or fiat currency standard, they ruin their countries with these fiat currencies. It allows government to engage in an enormous amount of authoritarian control and activity and completely sever any tie of accountability to the people. And we're seeing this writ large ever since 1914 with the creation of the Federal Reserve and a slew of other central banks around the world, and moving slowly off the gold standard. And many of you know August 15th, 1971, we know that's when Nixon completely severed the tie of the US dollar to the gold system and having gold backing. And once that happened, things went really badly. Our debts were ballooning. Our annual deficits were ballooning. We had the government had no accountability to the people. And at that point, that's when we started going on debt-based government, debt-based economies. And we just really have ruined America's standing, our credibility with the world, because we went to a fiat currency standard. And there's a whole bunch that goes behind that. But what we're trying to do is show people that a hard money standard is a way of creating what I call the ultimate freedom accelerator. And if we do that, this is the way that we minimize government intrusion into our lives and promote individual liberty. So feel free to join up. We get together 2 times a month, typically fourth Wednesday, fourth Saturday. For November and December, it's a little bit different because of the holidays. But other than that, and we always meet online because we found that that's the best way to lower the barrier to entry. We have gotten people in Germany, India, Mexico, South Korea, and of course, all over the United States. And we're very, very fortunate to have so many great participants. And we also have our own Telegram chat, and people are participating in it all day long. We send each other articles, commentary. We even have questions where people say, hey, how do I accomplish, this? What type of wallet should I use for a Bitcoin wallet? That's so great. And we love newbies. We love the energy they bring. We love the fact that they're asking the right questions, and it keeps us humble, all right? And it makes sure that we're always addressing what is the thing that brings the next person into this Bitcoin ecology.
Excellent, guys. Go join up with Jay in his meetup and check it out and get educated on how you can learn more about Bitcoin. And it can be a lot, it can be daunting, but you got some folks that can help you along that journey. So please go check out Jay's meetup. And then, folks, if you like this content, please like, share, subscribe the channel. Make sure you subscribe and leave us a comment on the episode of what you thought about leadership and the discussion on leadership. And I hope that it was fruitful for you, and that everyone out there can work on their own leadership skills. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Take care, everyone. Be well.
All right, man.